Today I would like to invite you to listen to the Dhammapada of the Buddha Shakyamuni, the 127th verse from the Buddhist scriptures on the YouTube channel Thien Thai in the USA. Not in the sky, nor in mid-ocean, nor in a mountain cave, is found that place on earth where abiding one may escape from the consequences of one's evil deed. This verse teaches the profound and inescapable truth of karmic consequence. In the story related to this teaching, a man who had long indulged in unwholesome deeds, thinking that fleeing to distant lands or hiding in remote mountains could free him from the consequences of his actions, soon realized the futility of such thought. Despite crossing seas, climbing high peaks, and seeking remote caves, he found that the weight of his deeds remained with him, arising in the mind as agitation, fear, guilt, and inevitable suffering. A wise monk, observing his distress, explained that actions carry within them seeds that cannot be outrun, that ethical and unethical actions alike produce results naturally, and that no physical place on earth or in the world can shield one from the unfolding of karma. The man, reflecting on this, recognized that escape lies not in flight but in mindfulness, ethical cultivation, and transformation of the mind. He began to practice generosity, restraint, and meditation, purifying the mind and creating the causes for wholesome results. The disciple learns from this story that the Dharma offers a true refuge. Understanding and practicing ethical conduct, mindfulness, and insight allows one to avoid the suffering that results from unwholesome deeds and to cultivate freedom and peace, independent of external circumstances. The verse emphasizes the universality and inevitability of karmic consequence. No mountain, ocean, or sky can provide sanctuary from the results of evil deeds. This teaches the disciple that external conditions are powerless against the law of karma. The world offers no refuge from unwholesome actions. Only the cultivation of virtue, ethical restraint, and insight can protect the mind from suffering and create the conditions for lasting peace. The monk in the story demonstrated this principle through his calm and unwavering guidance. He explained that ethical conduct is the only real shield, and mindfulness is the key to recognizing unwholesome tendencies before they manifest in harmful action. By cultivating awareness, restraint, and compassion, the disciple creates internal refuge, transforming the mind so that suffering arising from past actions is mitigated and future actions are aligned with Dharma. The teaching further illuminates the interconnectedness of action and result. Every thought, word, and deed carries potential consequences. Even if the mind attempts to escape through physical flight or isolation, the seeds of past unwholesome actions remain, manifesting in suffering, agitation, or obstacles. The story demonstrates that the monk's counsel was not abstract but practical. Transformation begins within, not through avoidance of external circumstances. The disciple understands that ethical cultivation, practicing generosity, patience, restraint, and mindfulness, actively changes the internal conditions of mind and produces wholesome outcomes. The natural unfolding of karmic results, while impartial, can be transformed by ethical awareness and diligent practice. Escape from suffering is thus not a matter of geography or circumstance, but of wisdom, ethical living, and spiritual cultivation. The verse also highlights the importance of mindfulness and vigilance. One cannot hide from the consequences of harmful actions by fleeing, isolating, or seeking remote places. The monk explained that unwholesome seeds planted in the mind will manifest in suffering unless they are recognized, restrained, and transformed. The disciple learns that constant awareness of thoughts, intentions, and actions is essential for cultivating virtue and mitigating harm. Mindfulness allows one to discern the arising of anger, greed, jealousy, or delusion, preventing them from manifesting in destructive behavior. In this way, the mind becomes a refuge and sanctuary where ethical cultivation and insight protect against suffering and prepare the ground for liberation. The story emphasizes that transformation requires active engagement with the mind. Physical isolation cannot remove the karmic consequences of harmful deeds. Only through ethical restraint, meditation, and cultivation of wholesome qualities can the mind be purified, allowing suffering to diminish and insight to grow. The man in the story, recognizing the truth of the verse, began to act with mindfulness, practicing restraint, generosity, and meditation, and gradually experienced peace and clarity. The disciple learns that ethical cultivation is both a preventive and remedial measure. It prevents further unwholesome consequences and mitigates the effects of past actions, gradually freeing the mind from the burden of accumulated karma. Furthermore, the verse encourages reflection on personal responsibility. One cannot blame external circumstances, geography, or others for the consequences of one's actions. The monk emphasized that karma arises from the mind, and its effects manifest according to ethical quality. The disciple learns that every action matters and that mindfulness, restraint, and compassion are essential to prevent harm and cultivate merit. Ethical conduct and meditation are not optional, but essential practices to protect the mind, shape destiny, and cultivate conditions for liberation. Escape from suffering is thus internal and experiential, realized through the cultivation of virtue, mindfulness, and insight, rather than through avoidance or concealment. The verse also teaches the inevitability of karmic balance. Just as one cannot outrun the natural order of seasons or the rising of the sun, one cannot evade the consequences of deeds. The monk's story illustrates that attempting to hide, flee, or isolate oneself from the world does not remove the results of harmful actions. Only transformation of the mind through ethical practice and cultivation of insight can change the trajectory of experience. The disciple understands that ethical awareness, mindfulness, and compassion are both the path and the refuge. They allow one to prevent harm, cultivate merit, and prepare for liberation. The internal landscape of the mind becomes the place where safety, freedom, and clarity are found, rather than in mountains, oceans, or distant skies. The teaching also emphasizes that ethical cultivation produces protection and liberation simultaneously. The disciple who acts mindfully, practices restraint, and cultivates compassion generates internal stability and merit. Such cultivation purifies the mind, reduces the consequences of past unwholesome actions, and prevents the arising of future suffering. The monk in the story showed that consistent ethical and mindful practice transforms the heart, creating a sense of refuge and peace that no external location can provide. By observing the arising of unwholesome tendencies and responding with mindfulness, the disciple gradually experiences freedom from the consequences of past actions, illustrating the profound practicality and power of the Buddha's teaching. Moreover, the verse teaches the inseparability of cause and effect. Actions, whether large or small, produce results, and no geographical location or physical refuge can prevent these results from manifesting. The monk emphasized that understanding, ethical cultivation, and mindfulness are essential to live wisely. The disciple realizes that ethical living and insight are not merely theoretical ideals, but practical necessities. They form the foundation for protection from suffering, cultivation of merit, and preparation for liberation. The consequences of actions are impartial and inevitable, but through ethical awareness, the mind can be purified and aligned with the path of Dharma. In addition, the teaching encourages diligence and consistency in practice. The disciple learns that karmic consequences are pervasive and subtle, arising in thoughts, words, and deeds. Mindfulness, restraint, and ethical cultivation must be maintained moment by moment. The monk explained that only through consistent attention to the mind and conduct can one mitigate the consequences of past unwholesome actions and prevent the arising of new suffering. Escape is not found in external refuge, but in the cultivation of the mind and the consistent practice of virtue, patience, and meditation. Through such practice, the disciple gradually experiences the benefits of ethical living, peace of mind, and clarity of insight. Finally, the verse teaches that the refuge from karmic consequences is internal and experiential. Mountains, oceans, or skies offer no protection from the effects of unwholesome action, but mindfulness, ethical living, and cultivation of insight provide true refuge. The monk in the story exemplified this through his guidance, showing the man that liberation and safety arise from transformation of the mind rather than from flight or isolation. The disciple internalizes this teaching, understanding that ethical cultivation, mindfulness, and insight create a secure place within the mind, where peace, clarity, and freedom from suffering are realized. By acting with awareness, restraint, and compassion, the disciple not only mitigates the consequences of past actions, but also prepares for awakening, cultivating merit, and aligning the mind with the Dharma. The disciple who contemplates the 127th verse understands that the consequences of action are inescapable, and that no external refuge can prevent the unfolding of karmic results. The monk in the story emphasized that all beings, regardless of their station, wealth, or geographical position, are subject to the law of cause and effect. Every thought, intention, word, and deed contributes to the shaping of destiny, producing outcomes that naturally reflect the ethical quality of one's actions. Even if one were to ascend to the highest mountains, sail across the widest oceans, or live alone in the deepest forest, the seeds of past unwholesome deeds would inevitably manifest. The disciple learns that the real refuge is internal, found in ethical living, mindfulness, and insight. By cultivating virtue and awareness, one gradually transforms the mind, mitigating the consequences of past deeds and preventing new, unwholesome tendencies from arising. The verse teaches that awareness of karma is essential for moral and spiritual development. The monk explained that many beings underestimate the power of subtle, unwholesome actions, believing that their effects are small or that one can escape them through cleverness or isolation. Yet even small actions, repeated over time, accumulate like drops filling a vessel, eventually producing inevitable consequences. The disciple learns that vigilance is required at every moment. For the mind is the source of action, and unchecked thoughts and desires lead to speech and deeds that shape experience. Mindfulness allows the practitioner to recognize harmful tendencies as they arise, preventing them from manifesting and creating new karmic burdens. Ethical living, coupled with sustained mindfulness, forms the true sanctuary, providing safety, peace, and the foundation for spiritual progress. The teaching further illustrates the universality and impartiality of karma. Just as the natural laws govern the rising and setting of the sun, the rain, and the seasons, the ethical law governs all beings, regardless of rank, wealth, or circumstances. The monk explained that no action escapes the natural unfolding of cause and effect. Evildoers, even if they believe themselves safe or hidden, eventually experience the results of their unwholesome deeds. This understanding inspires the disciple to act with ethical awareness, recognizing that every moment is an opportunity to cultivate virtue, restrain harmful impulses, and protect the mind. The path of Dharma is both preventative and transformative. It prevents further harm, purifies the mind, and gradually guides the practitioner toward liberation. The verse also conveys the necessity of active engagement with the mind. Physical isolation, geographical escape, or avoidance of society does not change the nature of past deeds. The monk illustrated this point by recounting the man who tried to hide from the consequences of his actions in remote locations, only to find that his mind remained restless and troubled. True safety arises from the transformation of the mind itself. By practicing generosity, ethical restraint, patience, meditation, and insight, the disciple develops an internal refuge that cannot be disturbed by external circumstances. This inner sanctuary protects the mind, allows merit to accumulate, and gradually diminishes the influence of past unwholesome deeds. In this way, the disciple comes to understand that liberation is a product of ethical cultivation and insight rather than avoidance or flight. Furthermore, the verse emphasizes the importance of understanding cause and effect in practical daily life. The monk taught that one's present experience is the result of past actions, and that future experience will be shaped by present actions. The disciple learns to observe this pattern not merely intellectually but experientially, noticing how unwholesome thoughts and actions lead to suffering, agitation, and obstacles, while wholesome actions lead to peace, clarity, and favorable conditions. Mindfulness and ethical conduct are therefore inseparable. Without ethical awareness, the mind creates suffering, and without mindfulness, one cannot recognize or restrain harmful tendencies. This understanding motivates the disciple to live each day with intention, awareness, and care, cultivating a mind that is free from harm and aligned with the path of liberation. The story also illustrates the compassionate aspect of the Dharma. The monk did not frighten the man for punishment, nor did he offer empty reassurance. Instead, he guided him to see the inevitability of karmic consequence and the way to transform the mind. By understanding the law of karma, the man was inspired to take responsibility for his actions, to cultivate virtue, and to practice mindfulness and meditation. The disciple learns that the Dharma is both protective and liberative. It provides awareness of the natural consequences of deeds, while offering methods to purify the mind and cultivate lasting peace. The verse thus becomes a tool for reflection, a mirror in which one sees the results of past actions and the path toward ethical and spiritual transformation. The teaching also emphasizes the importance of prevention. Recognizing that consequences cannot be escaped, the disciple is encouraged to act with care and ethical discernment in every moment. Each choice, each thought, and each word carries potential karmic results. The monk's story illustrates that avoiding harm, cultivating virtue, and practicing mindfulness from the beginning are the most effective ways to prevent suffering. Waiting until consequences arise is insufficient. Proactive cultivation of ethical conduct and mental clarity creates protection, merit, and conditions conducive to liberation. In this way, ethical vigilance becomes an essential daily practice, integrated into every aspect of life. Moreover, the verse highlights the inseparability of thought, word, and deed. The monk emphasized that harmful intentions, even when not acted upon, influence the mind and condition future experience. Similarly, virtuous intentions cultivate merit and create a mind prepared for awakening. The disciple understands that ethical cultivation begins in the mind, where awareness, restraint, and insight shape conduct and experience. The internal practice of vigilance, reflection, and mindfulness ensures that actions are aligned with Dharma, producing wholesome results and gradually liberating the mind from the consequences of past unwholesome deeds. The verse also inspires the disciple to cultivate patience and diligence. The inevitability of karmic consequence may appear daunting, yet the Dharma provides guidance and methods for transformation. By practicing generosity, ethical restraint, meditation, and insight, the disciple can gradually reduce the influence of past unwholesome deeds, cultivate merit, and prepare the mind for liberation. The monk in the story demonstrated that persistence and consistency in practice are essential. Through steady effort, the mind becomes a sanctuary of virtue, awareness, and insight, unaffected by external circumstances and protected from harm. Finally, the verse teaches the ultimate refuge is the mind itself. Mountains, oceans, caves, or remote lands cannot protect one from the consequences of unwholesome action. Only through ethical cultivation, mindfulness, and insight can the disciple find true safety and peace. The monk's guidance illustrates that the mind, when trained and purified, becomes a secure refuge, free from fear, suffering, and agitation. By practicing awareness, restraint, and meditation, the disciple gradually experiences freedom from the weight of past deeds, clarity of thought, and peace of heart. The Dharma shows that liberation is achieved not by fleeing from the world, but by transforming the mind through ethical living, insight, and compassionate awareness, creating a lasting refuge that no external condition can disturb. Thank you for watching my video. Namalamat Ba. I wish to bring this merit towards all disciples and sentient beings, all of whom will attain Buddhahood. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I really appreciate your time.